My name is Jonathan Schmidt. My wife and I had the privilege of serving with the South America Mission in Peru for 23 years. And in Peru, the Lord gave us the opportunity to not just build a lot of experience, but really grow to appreciate the value of missionary aviation. There's so many ministries in the jungle of Peru that would cease to exist if there was not aviation support. And the ministry is growing because there's new missionaries going out. God is calling new folks out there to reach different tribal groups, which is thrilling. And they depend heavily on Sam Air to be able to accomplish their work. In Peru, about 5 to 6 minutes in the air is a whole day on the trail or paddling a canoe. And so when you're even going, 1 hour, we're about 12 days on the trail. Practically speaking, if you're going out there with your children and the supplies you need to serve there, it's just not practical. And in many ways, it's unsafe. People think about the jungle and they think, wow, what a gorgeous place. And it truly is. It's amazing work of God. The creatures, the plant life, the trees, everything is incredible. It's breathtaking. But it's not friendly. Everything wants to eat you, including the plants. And so it can be a really rough place to try to travel through on foot. So for us, it's a great privilege. For the many, many times I was able to put a young missionary and his wife and kiddos in my airplane and literally have them sleep for an hour, 2, 3 hours, depending how far their place of ministry is, and arrive where God had called them to touch lives, rested, cool, with everything they needed for their work, and healthy and strong and ready to jump in, as opposed to arriving completely exhausted. Everything is gone, and that's a hard way. And I recognize that's the way I had to do it many years ago. But we thank the Lord for the privilege of serving with missionary aviation that can bridge that gap for ministry overseas. And so after these years, 23 years with Sam Air, and having served as chief pilot for the majority of that time, really, I grew to love instruction, just passing on what God had given me to help guys develop quickly and be useful and profitable there in the ministry. And so God started to touch our heart to go into full-time training. Although that was hard for us because we love Peru so much. We love the ministry, we love our team, we love the challenge of flying there, we love our church there, we love the language and the culture. It was really hard to leave, especially realizing that God had called us there and now God was calling us away. But it became a matter of obedience for Karen and I. And we chose to obey and come to a faraway place that is very cold. To us, it's just extremely cold here. But we did come in obedience, and God has continued to confirm in our hearts that this is where He wants us to be. One example of that is our children. We have 3 children, and they were spread all over the U.S. and overseas. And we thought we would be landing in the South and training in a school there, and God closed that door very clearly and made it very clear that He wanted us to be at Moody Aviation. And we came here convinced that this is really the only school that does it the way we do it. And since I was serious about training missionary pilots, this was the only option for us at that time. And so we came in obedience, and within a few years, all of our children moved here. And so we are blessed to literally be within a 20-minute drive of where I'm sitting right now, of where all my children live, and 14 going on 15 grandkids. So it's a real joy. It really is. And so after serving here on loan from Sam Air, it became apparent that this is a long ways from South American missions, purpose, goal, and physically. And so we started pursuing the option of joining Proclaim, which this is really what Proclaim is about, is getting guys prepared and to the field. Having known John and grown to love him over the years that we served in Peru, that was a really easy transition for us to move over to Proclaim, and very smooth, and our supporters identified with that and were able to continue to support us in our ministry here. So that's my story.
How did you get into mission aviation?
So I grew up in Ecuador. And for those of you that are familiar with the 5 men that died at the hand of the Guarani, that's exactly where I was born, in Shell, Ecuador. And as a little guy, growing up, being exposed to missionary aviation, the MEF base was right there within 1 block of where I went to school. And I just fell in love with airplanes, recognized that God had gifted me with my hands and coordination-wise. But the clincher for me was these MEF pilots and the way they loved me. As a little ornery, in your way kid, they just loved me, and I wanted to be like them. And so God used that even as a little tyke. I was 6 years old when I felt like this is where I want to be in the future. And so my whole life has been dedicated to preparing, serving, and now passing out on as a missionary pilot. What does it take to be a missionary pilot? Wow, that's a great question.
Maybe less on the technical, because
Yeah, well, yeah, we know that you have to be able to fly an airplane.
Exactly.
But I think that a big part of it is first of all, an unwavering dedication to the Lord Himself. So personally desiring to grow and be like Him. And secondly is a firm conviction of His calling to serve overseas, because it's not easy. And if you're not convinced about His calling, the first bump in the road, you're going to run for home. But if you know that that is where God wants you, then all of a sudden you're looking at the resources that God has given us through His Spirit to be able to not just survive, but to thrive and to be productive in the ministry. I think another very key thing is having the gift of service. Just loving, helping people, and it's not about the glory that you get, it's just that you just love to help people accomplish their work. And so that fits in beautifully with missionary aviation. Aside from the technical, which we understand clearly here in the training portion of it, I think that the biggest hurdle is just the personal walk with the Lord Himself. And I wouldn't call it a hurdle, but it's the biggest challenge to walk faithfully with the Lord.
True.
Well, that is certainly a part of it. But it has to do with, a big part of it has to do with your church. Being involved and committed, and being under the tutelage of somebody older and wiser to be able to encourage you through life challenges. They're real, and then being involved yourself in the ministry of loving other guys is such a great way to kind of build a foundation spiritually for a guy before he goes to the field. How to pick and choose.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's a great question to ask, because it really points back to the faithfulness of our God. And it just never ceases to amaze me that He chooses to use very imperfect people like me to accomplish His work. But what a privilege. It's amazing. So, clearly God made it possible for us to stay there. And there's a lot of things that play into that, not the least of which is a faithful supporting team. A team that not only saw the value of the ministry that we did, but they stood behind us and they prayed faithfully and they gave faithfully so that we could focus our attention on our work. I saw God work so many times through the work that I did with the airplane, and I have so many stories I could say that, wow, that just wouldn't have happened apart from the airplane. One simple example is that when we got to Peru, Bible translation was pretty much done. There was five translation teams working in the jungle. But we were flying to 27 different tribal groups that had the New Testament, basically. Okay, so there's a few dedications that we were able to be a part of it, but so they had the scriptures, but really no foundation of churches and small groups of believers. And over the time that we were there, we were able to see these churches grow and multiply to the place where they had church associations and even were building their own education system, their own seminaries to train their own leaders, and even to the point where some of them were sending missionaries to other tribal groups and overseas. And so in the 23 years, we got to see and be a part of this growing and developing work of the Lord in these tribal groups. Okay, so I have to back up a little bit. While I was training at Moody Aviation in Tennessee, we did not have any Cessna 206s. We only had 185s. And so all my training, my high performance, non-complex training was 185, which I'm really grateful for. The skills that I developed there were very useful. And when I went to the field, of course, they didn't have any 185s. They had a 206. And when I got there, I was told that I was second on the totem pole as far as priority to get checked out in the airplane. And I was okay with that because I love to do maintenance. As you just saw, I just love putting the airplane up on floats right now. So I was happy. I was doing maintenance and getting right into it. And then in about a month after I got there, the fellow that was working on getting checked out in 206 was unable to get to a place where the check pilot was even able to solo him. So the decision was made to go ahead and send him back to the U.S., let him get build some more experience in the airplane. And so when he left, the chief pilot came to me and says, "John, this is your opportunity. Are you interested in get checked out in the 206? And of course, this is what God had called me to do. It's just like, of course, I'm ready to go. We flew for 36 minutes and he got out of the airplane. And so that was my 206 orientation. And thankfully, we did have a couple of route checks to the north and south. But we ended up checking ourselves out in all of the strips with a very few exceptions. So after 5 years of this type of flying, myself and Craig looked at each other and we says, you know what? We cannot expect the next group of guys that come to do the same thing. This is ridiculous. We got to stop it now. So we chose at that point to write our own ops manual and fly by it and require that anybody that came with SAM Air would have to pass a TE at JARS or MEF. They would have to go through a 206 orientation. Then when they came to the field, they would have to be go through a field orientation as well. And so we did that, and we've stuck to it ever since, and God has blessed that. And thankfully, we've had a few fender benders along the way, but we've never hurt somebody, which we're really thankful for in the airplane. But eventually, we realized that it would be wise for us to join under JARS's flight manual. And so even up to today, we are insured by JARS, but we also fly by their ops manual. Well, I tell you what, hands down, the biggest benefit is knowing that Proclaim gets aviation training. They understand the time, they understand the effort it takes, they understand the cost of it, and they are very supportive of that. And so, yeah, that's by far the biggest thing for us. Yeah, I mean, we can look at it in many different directions here. First of all, most of the flight instructor staff here, the majority of the flight instructor staff are Proclaim. And I think about 50% of the maintenance staff are Proclaim. Moody would not exist if it weren't for Proclaim. That means that there would not be guys going to the field for Moody. That is huge. That's just immeasurable. The part that they play in Worthington is also significant. The guys that are gaining the experience and the extra time in the shop are much better prepared to get to the field. And not to mention the helps that they give us along the way. I've never thought about that. I think it would be very different. Yeah, I really don't know how to answer that question, to tell you the truth. I just know it would be very different. Yeah, I think that really makes a big difference. And they're really learning perhaps more of the heart and soul of mission aviation, not just the technical procedural part of it, which the technical procedural part, anybody can teach that. But giving the heart for ministry in aviation, I think that's a unique privilege that those of us that have field experience can add to it. I would say that you would see here a group of people that are dedicated to the Lord first, and then you have two separate groups, those that are learning and those that are teaching. And you see the learners, they are focused. They are some of the best students in the world. And I know why. It's because they're motivated by the right reason. Okay, they do want to honor God with their effort, with their gifts and their abilities, and they do want to learn it the very best they can because they know that their ability to serve hinges on that. And then you have those that are training. We're here because we want to. We raise our own money and support so that we can make it possible to be able to train these students. And so there too, again, the staff are very dedicated, very focused, and willing to sacrifice to make this happen. It just makes a beautiful teamwork between the two. I would say that the first thing is make sure they're involved in a church, that they're involved with older men that can counsel him and give him encouragement along the way and open his eyes to blind areas. And also that he be focusing on doing well in the studies he is. The mathematics and the sciences are key. So there's no room for sloppiness. There's just a place for discipline. Learning discipline and learning how to learn is really key to the success at Moody. And then also, a lot of guys ask me, well, should I get some flight training to get ahead of it? And my answer is no. Don't get in a single airplane. You can learn as much knowledge as you want. That can be helpful. but don't start learning how to fly an airplane from somebody else. We want to pour the foundation on how you fly an airplane. There again, it goes back to an involvement in a good church, and make sure that they're communicating with people, particularly the leadership in a church, and start to serve. Start to serve in the church. Learn what it looks, feels, smells like to be involved in the lives of people for real. Learn how to love people. Oh, let's see here. You didn't ask me if it's fun.
Is it fun?
So I'm going to answer that. The answer is yes and no. Sometimes it's beyond belief. I cannot believe that God lets me do this, because there's sometimes it's just amazingly fun. There are a lot of times when it's just plain hard work. It's discipline. It's getting up early. It's staying up late. It's staying in the books a long time. That's not fun for a lot of people. It's just plain hard work. And so being willing and coming, not because it's fun. There will be some fun. But come because God has called you and you're ready to buckle down and do what it takes to be an expert. Wow. On the field, I was very thankful that I did not fly every day. I'm not the kind of guy that wears propellers in my pants. I love to fly, but I need a balance in my life to other things, and maintenance seemed to be the other piece that I enjoyed so much. And so for me, the balance is kind of on the field was flight and maintenance. Okay, obviously we have a broad spectrum of different kinds of maintenance. It's not just airplanes. It's tractors, it's generators, it's mowers, it's septic system, it's plumbing, it's the water system, the electrical, you name it, and it just goes on and on. And it takes a lot to keep a base going. Okay, but I enjoyed that. That was a great break from flying. But then when I got to fly, it was quite enjoyable. I enjoyed most of the flying. Here, I find that my flight instruction is probably only half of the time or less, it's actually in the airplane. The rest of it is interacting with my students, either one-to-one or on a group basis.